From the BBC World Service, in association with ABC and Akashvani, this is Stumped.
Hello, I'm Alison Mitchell and welcome to Stumped. With me from Bangalore for Akashvani is Cherry Sharma, and in Perth, Clint Wheeldon is with us for the ABC. Now, Gary Kirsten is back in charge of a test-playing nation. He's taken on the role of head coach of Sri Lanka's men. Kirsten is highly regarded in the game, having famously led India to the 2011 World Cup title and, of course, helping South Africa to make it to number one in the test rankings. He'll begin his new job next month after signing a 2-year deal. And I've had the pleasure of catching up with him for Stumped, and he started by telling me just how the opportunity to coach Sri Lanka came about.
I got a call from Sri Lankan cricket asking whether I would be interested to consider the role. So I just said, well, I'm currently with Namibia preparing for the World Cup, and maybe we can have a chat when we come down to Colombo. And they phoned me when we got there because our last game was against Pakistan in Colombo. And they called me and and it just went from there.
And had you been thinking about taking on a big international role again? You'd had the taste with Namibia, but before that you'd had that 6-month stint with Pakistan. So what sort of headspace were you in?
Well, I think before the Pakistan role, I was in, the league space, 7 years in IPL, couple of years in the 100, a year in BBL, bit of South African league as well. So kind of got around a little bit. When I did finish with South Africa in 2013, the idea then was just to have as much time at home as possible because my kids were quite young. But now I've got 2 boys at university and a daughter who's still at school, but it's kind of freed me up a little bit to travel a little bit more. So I've always had this yearning to be involved in international cricket. It's where I've probably had my most success as a coach, and I do enjoy that space. The idea that you could spend a decent amount of time with someone rather than just a month or 6 weeks. Coaching does require that. It is so varied these days that it's not just about bringing a whole lot of different people together for a 1-month tournament. It's building relationships over a decent period of time.
What do you feel you can achieve with the group of players that Sri Lanka currently has?
Well, I think, Alison, the one nice thing about Sri Lankan cricket is that it continues to produce talent. I mean, that's never going to go away. South Africa is similar to that. It's just they're always good cricketers coming through. The fact that Sri Lanka made the under-19 final, World Cup final, is testament to that. So it's always nice to see that there are a lot of young cricketers around. I'm particularly excited. I'm heading over there in a few weeks' time. We only go to the West Indies in June. So I'm quite excited over the next couple of months just to get a real good understanding of the depth of player that they have in Sri Lanka. So that would be an absolute priority for me to understand. And then obviously just to have competition for places, which I think is an absolute must for every international cricket team. So that would be important. I don't think as a coach you need any real directive other than the team's got to win and it's got to keep performing, and Sri Lanka are ranked 6 in ODIs and tests at the moment and 8 in T20 cricket, so there's work to be done, but they're a proud cricket nation and they've got lots of talent in their system, so I'm excited to hopefully unlock the potential of the system.
How did that sort of 6-month period in Pakistan shape you? I mean, how do you look back on that time?
Well, it wasn't 6 months, it was 5 months, and
right.
it was 6 T20 games in total, so pretty much incidental in terms of an experience. In the end, I just enjoy working with cricket players. And if you have cricket players, whether they're from England, West Indies, Zimbabwe, Pakistan, India, Sri Lanka, they're cricket players, they're professionals. We talk the same language. We connect on similar things, and we're professionals in that space. And, I enjoyed the Pakistan players. I did. I thought they dedicated to the game. They really want to do well. But as I've journeyed around the world, this is now my 4th international job, you get to experience different levels of interference. And every country has a slightly different way of looking at it. And I think that was the real challenge there, is just to, kind of understand, the level of interference can get quite intimidating, and it can also get quite involved. And sometimes where you have no or very little influence as a coach, then what's the point of doing it? I mean, I only do this job because I want to help a group of people be the best that can be. I've been a cricket professional, since I was 20 years of age. I'm now 58. That's 38 years in the game. The understanding that you could actually add some value there, wherever you go, is for me really important. And if that is lost and you have no influence, then I don't see the point.
Were you shocked to hear that Pakistan players were fined for underperforming at the T20 World Cup? Was that ever anything that was mooted when you were there?
No, it wasn't, but not particularly shocked. I mean, it's just, for me, it's just sad. I mean, those players are giving their all, and I got to know them well, all of them. So I've got an emotional attachment to a lot of those guys. I saw them in Colombo, and it was great connecting with them again. And they're good guys. They want to do well for their country. So it's never nice when you see that. Yeah.
And with Sri Lanka, you will travel to England in September, I think, isn't it, for T20s and an ODI series. Were you keeping an eye on the England job at all? Because you applied in the past, is that right?
Oh,
a number of years ago.
Well, I actually, again, didn't apply, but I've had a number of conversations with people involved in English cricket. I mean, that's going back to when Andrew Strauss was the director of cricket. So
what about any conversations with Rob Key over the last little while?
Yeah, we did have conversations a few years back. Yeah, I think I've had a bit of scarring out of that experience, to be honest.
Really?
He asked me whether I was interested to coach the test side. That was a few years ago, and I was interested. I think it would have been a nice opportunity.
So was this prior to Brendan McCullum's appointment?
Yeah. I mean, it got quite close, to be honest. I mean, Rob was kind of said, we're very happy with your interview and the process that went through, and then they interviewed Baz, and Baz took over. And in fairness to that recruitment, he had a great couple of years, especially up front at the beginning. It went really well, and they brought a new brand of cricket in, and that's cool. But it was a kind of an interesting journey. But I've done it a few times with England. So
you've got a role with Sri Lanka now. Did you feel as if you don't have interest in England anymore as a result of those experiences, or could that still be something that could come around further down the line?
You never say never, Alison. I mean, I'm a cricket professional coach, but we'll have to see. I want to throw all my energy into Sri Lanka now, and I've enjoyed working in the subcontinent. I enjoy the players in that space. I'm just going to throw all my energy into that and not really think about anything else, and just hopefully have a good couple of years with the team, and we'll see where it goes. So I'm a professional coach, and for me, when I do sign up for something, I put my blinkers on and I go flat out into that space. So that's where my head's at the moment.
Just to draw on one other past experience of yours, when you had that great success of coaching India, obviously to the World Cup in 2011, they've just won the T20 World Cup, Champions Trophy holders. I'm sure they'll probably be going for the third T20 World Cup in a row. Do you think they can also dominate in the test space as well? And what would they need to do to dominate all around?
They've really worked it out in white ball cricket. I mean, I think beating India in India is going to be a tough assignment for anyone. I just looked at that team that played in the final. I mean, every one of those players that I could think of, and I might be missing out one or two, but every one of them would have played over 200 IPL games.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's huge experience.
That's a huge amount, so playing on their conditions with that level of experience is not going to be an easy assignment for anyone. And I think, playing on other conditions, it becomes a different story, and and then teams can become more competitive. In terms of Test match cricket, they've got some work to do. I had a chat to Gotham while we were at the World Cup, and he's mindful that they've got some work to do at Test match level. He finds it really challenging because the focus is not on Test match cricket. It's more on the white ball stuff. So I think there's a hope for him that he can really get that format firing in Indian cricket. He was a proud Test player himself, so he would want to get that format firing as best he can. But I think there are some challenges there with the amount of cricket that's being played at the moment, and getting people, getting a fast bowler to commit to a 25-over bowling day. It's not easy these days when guys are making a decent living bowling, 24 balls. At worst, even 60 balls, So it is a challenge, but certainly something that they want to put some attention into.
And if I was just to say to you, what's the thing that is most exciting you about getting involved with the Sri Lanka team and another international job? What would you say? Taking everything into account, lifestyle, cricket, Colombo.
Working with a bunch of international cricketers who want to progress and have the chance as a proud test playing nation to, be in the top 4 of international cricket teams across all the formats. That would be a lovely thing to achieve with Sri Lanka. So, and to really, compete in one of these World Cups, like properly compete, get into the semi-finals and be up there in one of the top teams. That would be something I'd be excited by.
Well, Gary Kirsten, who's the new coach of Sri Lanka's men. Clint and Charo have to say, a Gary Kirsten appointment just always looks like a good one to me. What do you say, Clint?
I agree, and certainly has had such success, as you mentioned, of course, with South Africa and India. I found it interesting that Sri Lanka's decided to go back to an international coach, and we know they've had success there in the past with Trevor Bayliss, Dav Watmore, Tom Moody, for examples that spring to mind. I would also think the point being made about the 2027 World Cup, if you're going to appoint somebody, put somebody in there that has, who would have more experience in how to have success in South Africa than Gary Kirsten. So I think they're great decisions. We've shown before, we've seen before that wherever he goes, he does have the ability to build a culture of winning. And I think that's something that Sri Lanka would be really keen to see instilled again.
I'm wondering what's going on in Sri Lanka because the coach recently was their World Cup winner, Jayasuriya. And he would, you'd imagine, have all the ingredients to get his own people together, know them a lot better, be able to motivate them and so on and so forth. Because, we all know, and Gary said it too, that they are a very proud cricketing nation, whether test or otherwise. And of course, there's a lot of talent bursting through. So what is ailing them? I think the good news is that they are not sort of tumbling over. They've said, we've had a bad World Cup, but we've got to get up and rise and do something about it. So the appointment of somebody who's an internationally proven winning coach is, I think, once again, an indication that they are not giving up. They're still very keen to make sure that they rise in the rankings. It always helps to have somebody who's basically very good-natured because, to have a coach who's a little cantankerous, you never know, relationships sour. But Gary is very, very good in that area. And hopefully he'll flower. But it's good news that Sri Lanka are thinking ahead, thinking positively, and trusting themselves to do better as they go along under a coach that's done very well in essentially subcontinental conditions.
And he's very clear, isn't he, Charo, about that need to be able to shape his own team and have influence, in stark contrast to what he came up against when he was with Pakistan for just that 5-month period.
Yeah, well, there's always going to be a bit of a language barrier, Alison, because, it's okay to talk cricket with a bunch of cricketers, but, to be able to really get into the country and their cricket, the one problem that a lot of coaches from overseas may face is the fact that they're not able to kind of become one with the population because of the language. I think that's a major barrier. You might argue that cricket has no language, but there's much more to a coach's job, and particularly in getting to know his wards better and trying to mix with them and get to know their lives better. So in that sense, he's once again going to be at a bit of a disadvantage. But also the second disadvantage being potentially that we know in Pakistan, he mentioned what words did he use? Interference or involvement of the boards?
Yeah, it was the fact that he didn't have control over selection as the coach. That was the major issue,
Yeah, I suspect in Sri Lanka, one of the many problems they've had, and I mean no major disrespect, is that their board too has been accused very often of interference by the government and elsewhere, and people from other areas or their ministers and things. And I wonder if that is going to continue. Somehow that can fall off and to give Gary free rein and respect the fact that he is the kind of cricketer he is, then he might have a better time. But if he is also to get a little discouraged and disappointed because of potentially this continuing interference, then I'm afraid, he may well say, well, what can I possibly do if I'm not getting what I really need and deserve?
It's also, Ali, that awkward situation where, and listening to what Gary's had to say, and I know speaking to Jason Gillespie, I think there were 3 different board of selectors in such a short period of time, all who had absolutely different ideas about who they wanted. And you ended up, go back to Jason Gillespie, who said it so well, he became, a match day analyst, and that's not what he signed up to do. So you almost, if you are Gary, you need to have the support of the board, the famous support of the board. But hopefully the same board for that entire period of time. Because if they continue to do what happened in Pakistan, I don't blame any coach for saying, look, this isn't working at all.
I want to go to what he said, Cherry, about the India team and dominating the test game. What do they need to do there? And his interactions with Gautam Gambhir, the India head coach.
Yeah, well, from what I recall, Alison, he did mention when it came to red ball cricket that India has perhaps more challenges than anything else, and Gautam Gambhir also has said similar things. I just wonder if India is paying enough attention to red ball cricket. On one hand, of course, India still has a very long and enduring Ranji Trophy red ball season, and out of that come many new red ball heroes. But the attention really, to me, seems to be on white ball cricket, and all the triumphs of white ball cricket seem to be getting all the attention. So I wonder if the recent losses, and there was a big one to Australia, and of course at home, God forbid, they lost the series to New Zealand, to South Africa, in major ways. And I wonder if we're blanketing those over a little too quickly and saying, oh, we don't really have a problem, we'll get past it. But I do feel that the attention to red ball cricket and the success of red ball cricket is somewhat diluted at this point of time. Also, countered by or balanced by the fact that India's succeeding hugely in white ball cricket. So they're saying, well, we're okay then, our cricket's all right. And if we're losing here and there once in a while in red ball cricket, maybe that's okay. So it's a massive challenge, without doubt. And India are probably playing an average amount of test match cricket, but the attention is average or less. And it's the attention that needs to improve. There's enough red ball talent for sure. But I just think it's playing second fiddle to white ball in many ways.
Absolutely, when there is so much success being rightly celebrated amongst the white ball game in India. I was really taken by his reaction when I asked him about the England job, and in saying he'd been scarred by those experiences. And he sort of said it lightheartedly, but it was a very genuine, authentic reaction, because he's been twice in, let's say, consideration. First when the job went to Chris Silverwood, I believe it was. And then again, as he said, Rob Key spoke to him in that process where they eventually appointed Brendan McCullum. So, yeah, if you've twice been kind of brought in but then overlooked, or approached and then overlooked, do you go back a third time if the job does come available in the future? Of course, there's no job available now, and he's got a post with Sri Lanka. But, yeah, it'll be towards the end of this month where the ECB are expected to give their Ashes review, which will indicate whether Brendan McCullum is staying on. The direction of travel sort of feels like Brendan McCullum will likely stay on despite the Ashes debacle. But yeah, Gary Kirsten now, as he said, he's got those 2 years committed to Sri Lanka, and I'm pretty excited to see what he can do with them, with those aims of rising up the rankings and challenging at the next World Cup. Well, that's it for Stumped for this week then. So thanks to Charu and to Clint, and until next time, bye for now.